Few Tasmanians visit the far northeast tip of the island. Here at Cape Portland are some fascinating relics of a bygone age when sealers, whalers, ticket-of-leave convicts and shepherds lived a rugged and isolated existence far from civilization. Once a region where primitive technology allowed the indigenous inhabitants to survive for thousands of years, now hosts the latest in technology, harnessing the incessant winds of the roaring 40s as they sweep across the Cape. Here on a small island in the Tregaron Lagoons are the last resting places of the district's pioneers, the Bowen, Groves and Terry families. After the indigenous inhabitants were shipped off to Flinders Island in the 1830s, land was sold to the Foster, Bowen and Groves families. In the 1980s, grade 10 students from Scottsdale High School visited this area as part of the survival camp, which involved living it tough in the bush, just like the pioneers. Students had to navigate with map and compass to the lonely cemetery on the island. Here, some of the students discovered the graves of their ancestors.
Who was it?
My great uncle.
And what did he do?
He started up Rush Lagoon.
Right.
Weep not, my parents dear, I am not dead but sleeping here. I was not yours but God's alone. He loved me best and took me home.
George Grove Sr. was transported to Van Diemen's Land in 1850 for stealing sheep. In 1874, he went to work at Red Hills property as a shepherd for Nathaniel Allison. Members of the Groves family came to own or manage nearly 100,000 acres of land around the Cape. They owned the property known as Rushy Lagoon and built the Icena homestead. Samuel Bowen was born in Wales. He was a blacksmith by trade, but after being convicted of burglary was sent to Van Diemen's Land for life, arriving in 1823. When the Cape Portland property was sold to the wind farm project, the cemetery site was cleared up as the old wooden fence had fallen down. In the early 1900s, a Mr. Terry managed the property for the Fosters. In 1833, Samuel and his wife Anne acquired a 1,500-acre Tregaron property at Cape Portland, and this became the family home for over 100 years. The family leased considerable areas of land around Cape Portland, conducting sheep farming on a large scale. Wool was shipped from nearby Westboat Harbour to markets. There are now 56 3-megawatt wind generators, producing enough electricity to power 30,000 homes. In the 1850s, cattle were shipped to and from the foster property at Cape Portland to Victoria. Little is known about the stone buildings out on the Cape, probably built by ticket of leave convicts for the Foster family. John Foster, the original owner, never lived here, but his brother Henry lived at the Cape and managed the property until the mid-1850s. There was a substantial establishment at the Cape by 1842, with 14 males, including 7 shepherds, 5 gardeners and stockmen.
And here we are standing where we shouldn't be because the sign says no, don't go inside, it's dangerous.
Sheep were brought from properties at Cressy to the Cape, a journey taking 15 days. Over 3,500 sheep were on the property in 1870, although many of these died of liver fluke.
Is that the door they used to get to?
No, the door's around the other side. Because it was a 3-seater. Whether it actually was.
It's pretty big though.
So there is a door.
Is that on?
Yep.
Yeah, I thought so. The way you move it about. Pretty hairy for a toilet.
Yeah.
How come they've got galvanised roofing iron?
The view from Vinegar Hill on the Cape gives panoramic views over Bank Strait to the Furneaux Islands, including Cape Barren and Flinders Island. It was past here that Bass and Flinders sailed in 1798, confirming Bass Strait existed and that Van Diemen's Land was an island. In 1815, James Kelly, who circumnavigated Van Diemen's Land in a whaleboat, landed near Cape Portland and conversed with a large clan of Tasmanian Aborigines. He persuaded some of the women to catch seals for him on nearby rocks. In 1831, George Augustus Robinson was in the Cape Portland area with the aid of Marlin Agena, chief of the Cape Portland tribe, was trying to round up some of the last Aborigines in the area to take them to Flinders Island. Sealers and bay whalers had established themselves at Cape Portland and nearby Furneaux Islands in the early 1800s. A tripod was discovered here by a fisherman and taken to the Low Head Pilot Station.
And this is in fact one of the preferred wader counting areas in Australia. There are certain areas set aside to be counted regularly for the next 10 years. And this is one of them, so it's obviously a very significant flight. 20,000 kilometres to breed and then fly 20,000 kilometres to come back here to have a rest. Now it's got to time its flight, and it's going right now, they're on their way now, to land in the tundra of northern China and Siberia, just as the permafrost is beginning to melt. So that if he gets there too soon, it's all frozen and there's no tucker. As soon as the frost melts, all that becomes alive with insects, so it's got loads of tucker, and to have a breeding bird you've got to have lots of food, because you've got to feed your babies, haven't you? If you don't feed them, they die. Right? So he's got to time that. Now the summer in the Arctic is very short, so he's got probably 3 months of frenzied activity of feeding eggs, young birds, big enough to fly back before the end of that 3-month period. And then they can fly 20,000 k all the way back here just to sit for the rest of the summer here while they get themselves fat again. Now when they're in the summer here, they get sat down and they feed and feed and feed until they put on twice their body weight. And then they fly all the way back.
So as we leave the Cape, reflect on the significance of this largely unknown area, once the homeland of Manalagana and the large northeast clan of Tasmanian Aborigines. Then a busy sealing and whaling base, before the earliest farming area in northeast Tasmania, with its extensive sheep runs. Now it is a combination of high-tech wind farming with new, more intensive farming methods including dairying. What might the future hold for such a fascinating location on Tasmania's far northeast corner?